For more on this story, we turn now to Dion Nissenbaum. He is a national security reporter for the Wall Street Journal, and he joins us this morning from our Washington bureau. Dion, good morning.
Good morning, Vanina.
So we've heard a lot about the seriousness of ISIS, but we really haven't heard a lot about the strategy. What exactly is the administration going to change, if anything?
Well, that's what we're going to see, I think, in the next week. They are clearly looking at airstrikes in Syria. The Pentagon is tracking ISIS leaders in Syria. They're looking at training sites in Syria. They're looking at trying to stop the flow of fighters from Syria into Iraq, where the airstrikes are going on. And I think that's where we're seeing the evolution of the strategy now, is looking at Syria and the strikes there. More broadly, they're trying to build an international coalition to cut off funding for the group, to try and deal with the threat of foreign fighters that could come back to Europe and the United States. And so I think this is where we're seeing the evolution. And I do think that the beheading of James Foley really changed the calculus for the president.
Diane, what does that effectively mean for our relationship with the Assad regime?
Well, we don't really have much of a relationship with the Assad regime, and it'll be an interesting dynamic. ISIS poses a threat to the Assad regime, so in some ways this could benefit him in his fight against the rebels, but it's a very complicated battlefield, as you know. There are some thoughts that President Assad has allowed ISIS to grow so that they could be a counterforce to the moderate rebels. So it's a very complicated situation in Syria.
I think a lot of people, it was really a wake-up call when Rhodes said basically that ISIS could pivot to the attacks on the scale of September 11th. I think a lot of people are really wondering, could this group that we've heard is basically the worst extremist group we have heard of to date, could they turn their focus onto the United States?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting debate, and I think it's one where we haven't seen real evidence that that's the case yet. General Martin Dempsey, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, has said that he believes that they are a regional threat at this point, meaning that they really are contained to what's happening in the Middle East. But as we saw with the execution of James Foley, what they're now saying is, look, you've started attacking us in Iraq. Now we're going to turn our focus more on you. And I think that's really where the calculus has changed here. Whether they have the capabilities to do something like that, I don't think we've seen that yet.
6 months ago, the president's called ISIS a JV organization, even though intelligence officials have been sending up warning flags for a while. Did the White House underestimate ISIS?
It certainly looks like it. Even when ISIS overtook Mosul earlier this year, the Pentagon was saying, look, that we've seen these kinds of things. It's not a big deal. We think that they're contained. And I think they've been surprised all along the way at how quickly and how ably they've been able to take ground in Syria and Iraq. And I think they're really just waking up to that now.
Dion Nissenbaum, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Anytime.